So again, just to get us started, my name is Drew Peterson, Associate Dean of Students, Director of Residence Life, and on the ACUHO-I Executive Board as your Director for Small Colleges and Universities. This is an open chat. We've got a couple of our other experts in residence from small colleges. So Beth, if you want to introduce yourself, I'll let you go next.
Hi, I'm Beth Ackman. I'm the Director of Housing at SUNY Morrisville, and I'm so excited to see MC here. Sorry.
I'm excited to see you too.
Hi, everyone. My name is Stephen Kores. I'm the Associate Dean of Residence Life and Off-Campus Housing and Ombuds at the Curtis Institute of Music in Philadelphia, and I'm happy to see everyone.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Robin Gagnon. I work at Baldwin-Wallace University, just outside of Cleveland, and I'm the Residence Life Academic Manager.
Robin, what's up with your video? I like seeing your nice face.
I don't know.
We just see a yellow and black. Am I the only one seeing this?
No, it's like a Post-it maybe.
Did you put something over your camera so we can't see you?
No, I didn't, but I'll check it out.
Is that your rear camera? Do you need to switch which camera?
Oh,
Actually,
that's probably what it is.
Oh, I might have did that. Okay. Thank you.
And since we have such a small group, why don't we just go around and finish introductions? In the Hollywood Squares world, Allison, you're next on my screen.
Hi, everyone. I'm Alison Willett. I'm the Director of Residence Life at Pittsburgh State University, Pittsburgh, Kansas, Southeast corner. And I'm happy to be here.
And Tanya?
Hi, I'm Tanya Lane Martin. I'm with Genesee Community College. I work very closely with Mary Claire.
And Mary Claire?
I am MC Tasper. I'm also at Genesee Community College. I'm the Director for Residence Life and Learning, and I'm still excited to see Beth.
And last but not least, it's good to see you, Julie.
Hi, Drew. Hey, everybody. My name is Jillian Mcmahon. I'm the Director of at USC Upstate.
And there's Robin.
I'm here.
So one of the questions that I had, and this may be a relatively quick and easy question, we're at the point now where we're starting to outgrow our roommate matching stuff that we've been doing, our in-person stuff. We're looking at going electronic. What are y'all using, if anything, for software for housing assignments and roommate selection stuff? And is there anything you would recommend that I definitely check out?
We use HMS to do the roommate assignment stuff, and we only have 7 questions. We're at an ag school, so I definitely have to move, like, if you're an ag major to match with other ag majors, because I definitely get asked, like, do I have to live with a farm kid, or I don't want to live with a city kid? Really weird question, I know, but it is something I have to worry about. But we asked 5 questions, and then they do that. We also were able to add pronouns, which was very important this year, because it was able to help us with some of our housing. And I love that HMS gives us that option, and it rolls into Banner. And I know that Star Res also gives pronoun option. And also the nice thing about HMS and Star Res is you don't have to put a sex to a residence hall room. The other thing I like about HMS is it does an auto assign for you. So as long as you have all of your questions set up, it will match them for you if they don't have someone they want to match with. But if they put in that they want to match with someone, it pulls them automatically and puts them in the room. So it kind of does a lot of work for me, and I get to kind of sit on my butt and just hope my computer doesn't freeze while it's happening.
Yeah, Drew, we're using StarRes here. All 4 of the USC campuses that have residential are using StarRes. Clemson's using StarRes. Coastal's using StarRes. So South Carolina's kind of a StarRes heavy state. Much of the same stuff that Beth was talking about. There's auto allocate. So as long as the students have answered the questions, and students can set up their own roommate matching pair as well and try to find people between March and June for us. That's our deadline. But after June 1st, we hit the button and it just populates it, tells you what the best percentage is. So it'll say, oh, this person's a 67% match, this person's an 87% match, this person's 16. And we're like, whoop, find a new person for them. And yes, like Beth was saying, you can have dynamic gender for your rooms. So the rooms can change every semester. And the gender affiliation is on there, and yeah, you write all your own questions for how you want it matched. They work with you. The project manager works with you on what you want to, what your attributes are going to be. Like our number one attribute, we match by music, because you can get along if you like the same music. But all the other stupid questions about do you smoke, what time do you go to bed, that changes when they go to college. But their music preference usually doesn't. So our number one question is music.
The cleaning question has helped. It just doesn't help when the parent fills it out, but it helps when the student fills it out. The sleeping thing doesn't matter. They don't know when they're going to go to bed. Sorry, is that a horrible thing to say? But like the cleaning thing really has helped, because if you're someone that's very neat, as long as mom and dad didn't fill it out, you're going to want to be with someone else who's very neat. Because if you're with someone who's super sloppy, you're not going to want to be with someone. Yeah. But we, our ag one is actually our biggest attribute because of our majors. But I didn't think about the music one. So do you list like country, R&B, rock?
I have 42 genres of music.
Okay. I might be emailing you, because that would totally be a cool one to go by, because, and the smoking one, we're not going to get into that. But anyways,
A white paper about it in 1999. I wrote a white paper about it. It got published by ACUHO-I, because for 4 years I had 0 roommate conflicts.
Anyone else with recommendations, or do y'all live in the same boat I do and just do everything homegrown?
No, we do use STARS here at Pitt State. Where I wrote in the chat that we're going through we're sending those questions about roommate selection to our RHA this year, so that we can get feedback from students. So I don't know if that's something, we haven't done that in years. Saw any kind of feedback. We do think some of the questions are kind of silly, especially since they don't end up being the reasons that students have roommate conflicts. They do tend to be things about more about lifestyle, that like not just about music, but like I want this kind of college experience, and then the roommate wants the other, like a more conservative college experience. So they're trying to maintain whatever they did in high school, with like we're heavily focused on academics, or somebody who wants to have one more social life and bring people to the room more often, things like that. Those are the things that we end up having conflicts about, not necessarily smoking. And then of course, just any surprises. We do have a lot of traditional style housing, and our STARS is connected to our institution's application. And so actually that gender does get populated, and they have to select one. It's something that they're working on, with at least the President's Council is talking about doing. We've changed stuff within our Canvas. We use Canvas for their classroom learning management system, but and we can change like your name and preferred name, but we're trying to make some changes. But some of that stuff is like a complete rehaul, and of course outside of housing and how that happens. But yeah, our application does actually require somebody, if they select other, it will be changed by whatever they had to select for their institution's application. So we're working through those kinds of issues. But yeah, no, we're actually sending our questions to our RHA this year to get student feedback, to see what they think students actually fight about.
we did it to our SGO, because we don't have an RHA that's very strong because of the way our school's set up. So we did an SGO 2 years ago, and that's when we dropped from 27 questions to 5, because they're like, we don't answer all of these. Why do you make us do this? So they actually helped us drop it down, but I definitely want to take it back to them and see if we can add the music one and get rid of the smoking and the bedtime one. They just don't really work for us.
I appreciate y'all sharing. There's, a gabillion and one of them out there. It's just nice to hear what people are using and what it does well, and where they're still working on their products too.
The reason why we went with HMS is because our card system uses it for meals. So we were able to get a better deal. So we got down to Res Center, HMS, and can't remember the other one. StarRes and HMS. And we were able to get a better deal with HMS because our meal swipes and our college IDs go through a different form of HMS. So that was why we were able to go with that one. So if you already have something on campus, see what their housing component is, because you sometimes can get a nicer deal. And, you know, being at a small school, we might have to like look at the financial aspect.
That's what's driving this ship.
At BW, we went with eRes Life. We looked at Star Res as well as a few others, but the cost was a big factor for us. And then what else we could add down the road. Again, like we were able to add like the student conduct to it, and we're able to do where we added where students can sign up on their own house. They can sign their own housing agreement and choose their own room. So we started out small, and then we were able to add on what we needed.
Yeah, that's a good point. So our returning students do their own housing. So our housing application is through that, our agreements are through that. They have to do all of that, and then we can literally just open it up, and we have a way that we run it. It's like your GPA times your credit hours times blah, blah, blah. And then the students get notified and they can log in, and if they pick 3 other people, if they're going into a suite, they all pull in. If they want a single, whatever, it literally makes it so if it was not COVID years, life is much easier with housing assignments. Pre-COVID, it was great for like 2 years. And then COVID hit. And because there was the whole talk of, are we coming back? Are we not? I did have to manually put a lot in. The nice thing is with Star Res and with HMS, they both are cloud-based. So you don't have to have something on your computer. You could do it from anywhere. So that might be something also to look at, because cloud-based is really helpful. Also, both of them give a lot of access to your RDs. So you don't have, again, small departments, right? You don't have to do every housing operation aspect. Like my RDs switch them from building to building. Like I don't have to after I set it all up. The only thing is if there's a financial change, they go through me just to make sure that we're all on the same page in case a parent calls screaming, yelling, like, why is my kid in a more expensive room? But otherwise, it's really helped with like RDs being able to really keep their own rosters, and plus it gives them that experience. So anything like that, I always say like definitely see what the staff can do to help you, because a lot of us don't have like layers of assistant directors and housing operation people, or at least they don't at SUNY Morrisville. So yeah.
Yes, Robin, I agree with you. The tech support is key. That's actually one of my favorite things about our student conduct software is they respond back almost instantly when I have a question or need something.
What do you have for student conduct?
Maxient.
We're literally, I just finished our training, our part 2 training today for Maxient on how to create the forums and get everything. We're going to go live with Maxient in like 2 weeks. So I'm excited. It's definitely a better software than what I used to work with. So
we had a staff member that came from a place that just had spreadsheets and Microsoft Access documents and was like amazed when they saw how much easier it was to use Maxient. So
that's us, but that's our housing.
Huh?
Microsoft Access is what we use as our housing software. So I feel that. I feel that a lot. But we do have Maxient, and Maxient's wonderful.
Maxient talks to both Star Res and HMS. So like when you're doing your housing assignments for like our mathematical equation to do auto assigning, like letting them pick themselves for residential returners, it puts in their conduct number. So if it's 0 or if they have conduct, because Maxient and HMS talk. Res Center has a very similar attribute. I mean, Star Res has a very similar attribute. Literally, we were down to money on the 2. I would have gone with either one. I'm a fan of both.
Maxient is definitely the more high end of the softwares. It is definitely, we looked at a bunch and it was definitely the most expensive of all the top 3 that we found.
But it's amazing.
Yeah, exactly.
And Pat lives right in Syracuse. If anybody ever needs him, like he's right down the road from me. I love the Maxient team. It's the 3rd college now I've been at that we've implemented Maxient. So I'm a huge Maxient fan. Another software that sometimes works because we had to go paperless was RoomPact. So it doesn't do your housing assignments, but we use a lot with RoomPact, especially with residential education. And it doesn't cost nearly as much as a housing software. right now they have this awesome, well, they started like during COVID, but you can text or email or both students. So like when they lose their college ID, you can send them a message. And if you want to send out a floor thing, like stop peeing on the toilet seats, you can do that through it. And also all of our, I'm just giving examples of what I've sent out in the past couple weeks. And all of our RCRs and programming and intentional conversations, everything's tracked in RoomPact. We have Maxient, RoomPact, and HMS as our softwares in ResLife.
Well,
And
before this becomes a full-on vendor showcase, are there other questions out there that we want to talk about? Although I'm sure the reps for all of these companies are loving the fact that we are discussing their good products.
Yeah, Drew, one thing I've noticed in the last month or so are the number of small schools that have new directors or are looking for directors, which kind of concerns me. Like I noticed, especially in the Great Lakes region, we had 2 small school directors leave. And I was wondering, and as I looked through the higher education job website, I see a lot more positions for small schools. I was just wondering, has COVID really taken a toll on small schools? Because at larger schools, I noticed that they have one person who coordinates, they're isolated in quarantine spaces. At schools like, our size, that fell on our plate to handle.
I mean, it's funny that you mentioned that. I've been having that conversation, Robin, with a few other people as well. I think it's something that we've noticed, and I remember even in May of last semester, we had a big conversation as a group in my region discussing various positions that we had open and kind of like, the search process and everything. And about 10 of us were having a conversation about how, in general, not so much the director role, but we're seeing more of the entry level and mid-level folks kind of disappear and not even look for other jobs in ResLife, but like actually leave the field.
Yeah.
And some great conversation around that was had. One colleague at a school in Washington shared, and DC shared that for the first time, how, and not, I say we figuratively, I know we don't do this, but we as a field like to ghost applicants a lot of the times and maybe not, call them back or, give them any information during the hiring process or the selection process. A number of universities have a habit of doing that, or they'll email individuals 6 or 7 months later saying, oh, the position has been filled. Well, thanks. That's a year later. I've already found a job. That the opposite is now happening. They are now ghosting us. I had 3 colleagues, specifically one in DC, share that she had 2 candidates ghost her. One was even given an offer for a position, and then they never heard from her again. And they found later on that she took an offer somewhere else outside of ResLife. And a few other colleagues shared that that was something that was happening. Another kind of point to this conversation that was brought up during this conversation I had with these folks in May was Gen Z's done, millennials and boomers and Gen X, we all took it. But Gen Z is like, no, my mental health and my value is more than $30,000. I have over $100,000 in debt, and you want to give me $30,000 for, a 80-hour-a-week job, essentially. Peace out. I can take my bachelor's degree and make 6-figure salaries somewhere else. And I think if you look at the expatriates group, which is so entertaining, if you just watch that every now and then, I'd be careful to post on it because people are monitoring that thing apparently. I think that's what it is. I think our young 20-something, early 20-somethings who are entry and mid-levels are basically giving a big middle finger to the field and leaving and saying, you know what, this is not, you guys can do it. And, but this is not for me. And a part of me is kind of like, how dare you? But a part of me is also like, good for you. We should have done that ourselves like 10 years ago. Now we're in too deep. We're lifers now. It's over for us. But good for you, kids. Get out while you can. Find better jobs. Find more money. And it's sad when I can say that I've had 3 resident directors who have gone on to leave the field in the last 5 or 6 years for other positions and are making more than what I do as a senior housing officer. And I have 10 plus years over them. So go figure. That's my rant. I'm getting off of the soapbox now.
So, Stephen, I want to respond to that because I do hear what you're saying. But I also like, sometimes I feel like I totally understand being in both camps because I'm like, but my school is different, right? Like, I feel like I'm not just in deep, but I like love what I do. And if I could just show you like that we're not a school that's going to abuse you. And if we pay a very reasonable amount of money for the amount of responsibility you actually have. I think what really I struggle with is like when folks want to come in, there seems to be this time where they want like all this additional responsibility and then like also more pay. And I'm like, that's somebody else's job. So there seems to be like, they're not, we've lost the time period, at least in our area, we have a lot of stability. So like folks just don't leave. And so when we do lose 3+ people in our office, like, which I'll talk about here in a second, but like the entry level position is not, they're not leaving. And so but they're like, but I want to stay here because I don't want any other job where I don't know yet what I want to do. But like, I want you to pay me more and I want you to give me more responsibility. So like, I'm like, no, you need to go get a different job. And so we're having a hard time with that a little bit because it's like, I can give you new responsibility, like maybe add to your plate, but don't get mad when you're working like over 40 hours a week. Like there's
Alison, I have a question to that. I agree with you. Me and you are on the same page with this. And I struggle with this argument because I feel like a hypocrite sometimes because I go back and forth. I'm curious though, what do you require? Do you require masters for your entry levels?
Yeah,
So
but it doesn't have to be in housing.
Okay, so then,
student affairs. It doesn't have to be in student affairs.
This is where I think a lot of the Gen Z folks are kind of like, we are the only field that really says, okay, you can get a master's degree to do this basic entry level work and, have 100 grand in debt and then come in and make 40 grand a year. We'll give you free housing though, so don't worry about it. You'll be okay with 40 grand. And then also say, but we want you to be out in 2 to 3 years so we can hire new, young, fresh people with new perspectives and who are greener and bring new energy because you have aged out of the entry level position. You don't see that in finance. You don't see that in education. You don't see that in anywhere else. We are, and it's funny because we are horrible at this in so many ways. We are ageist. It's so, for being the progressives of higher ed, we are sometimes like not as progressive as we think. We're kind of mean girlsy in many ways. For lack of
I don't even mind that they stay. It's like, but you can stay, but you can't complain. Like there's sort of this element of like, I actually totally see that you want more in life. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I don't know that it's here. Like you've been here for 10 years as an RD, like maybe you should move on. And not just because of you can't handle it, or it's like, but you have aspirations, but this transition into either getting out of housing, which I was just talking to we have area coordinators here, but I was talking to one today in a one-on-one going like, what do people who leave housing do? I don't actually know what that's like because this sort of work life, working and living all at one, and this sort of like you don't leave your personal life at the door. Like you're like always living and working at the same time. So it's like, what kind of field do people go into? So when you're talking about like, oh, they found another job where they're making more money, good for you, but are you as fulfilled? Like there's something about working in higher education or working in housing that has this like very holistic part of the experience that we love. That's why I am not stuck here. I've chose this every day, but I think that's really hard to hear folks that are like, yeah, no, I need more money. And I'm like, but life is more. And I sound like the people who leave after, like retire from here going like, you guys are too young. You don't understand. And I feel like I'm only not even 40 and I am already speaking those words to people 10 years younger than me. But I'm like, you just don't get it. There's more to life than money. But you also have to pay your bills. But I think that, I don't know, I struggle with that, but I did lose three people in my office, no joke. One of them was our director who had been at the university for over 40 years.
Okay.
And he got retired, and actually 3 people in this office retired. So there's a newness that comes from not having doing the same things that we've always done. But at the same time, we're like, who's going to do all this work? Because like there's a lot of things you just didn't realize that were being done, that somebody was, sort of like hoarding. So now, just for information's sake, we actually decided to split the office into director of residence life and also a director of university housing administration. So we sort of like an operations, but then we have our own custodial and maintenance, and they are actually just over our AVP or under our AVP. So like neither one of us, but also because they're directors in those areas have been here for a while, and maybe they don't want our supervision. You know what I mean? Like they need somebody else to supervise them. So we kind of are supervised by our AVP, but we have 2 directors, and we're like, how do we both direct this office? It's very interesting. We're learning, but we also really like it. But I we, even the people who are here wonder, like, what do schools do when people leave? Like, how does that work get redistributed? If just nobody will come work for your school, even though you love it and, you think you're different than everybody else, like, how do you get people? Or if you can't, then how do you redistribute so that people are still not shells of a human being, but they still come to work every day, wanting to work?
So at Morrisville, we don't require a master's. So that's helped me with a little bit with marketing the position, because we are part of SUNY, so you can come here and get your master's in your 4-year period. We also give a 4-year period, which has helped because the 2 and 3 years doesn't give someone enough time to get a master's if they don't have one, because most of the time the first semester they're getting the job under their belt. Second semester, they might be looking, third semester they start. So that gives them, the 2.5 years to get it done before they are ready to go on to like an assistant director.
Elizabeth, you said there's a 4-year period. Do you mean like a term limit? Like after 4 years, you got to vacate the position?
Yeah.
Okay.
So what happens is, I had a really awesome boss when I was at Johnson Wales, Miami, Dan Offstein. And he was very good with saying that your apartment needs to be your home. And he made sure that people understood that, like, you don't have to have dorm furniture. I hate that word, but that's what I'm going to call it, in your apartment as your couch. Like, get a real couch, get a real bed. He was always clear on every new person gets their own new mattress. And it wasn't a twin size mattress, it was a queen. So he's always like, make sure that wherever you go, you treat your staff the same way I'm treating you. So make sure that you're always tell your RDs that their apartment is their home. Draw a line in the sand at your door that people don't come in, and make sure they have adequate furniture. He also says, while you're an RD, start saving money to buy furniture. So it was always nice because I always had like a small kitchen set. I had a small living room set, and I had a bedroom set when I started at Johnson Wales, Miami. First job as an RD was freaking awesome. And I have made sure that when I started here and when I was at other colleges, that I really pushed for the budget to be actual furniture for the RD apartments. Right now we are slowly redoing the buildings. And one of the things I always worry about, and they have me on the renovation team because of this, is the RD apartments, because they're as dated as the buildings, and you can update the building, but you got to update the RD apartment too. And also my RDs love when they have an outside entrance, because yes, they'll go through the main entrance most of the time, but when you have your guests over, or you're bringing something in that the rest of the students can't have, you don't want the bag to rip open. So it's like making sure that they also understand that their mental health is important. And not saying that Morrisville is any different than anywhere else. I mean, we have our struggles hiring. I mean, we're in the middle of a cornfield, literally. So we have had issues with hiring people, but I have an amazing staff this year, so I lucked out with that one. But we are smaller because of COVID, because of density in buildings. So how did we reallocate? Well, what did we get rid of and what did we enhance? And that's what we did, is what could we get rid of and what could we enhance? So we worked on doing that. And we worked with what we had. So I'm not saying that I've had a lot of conversation with people that are like, I don't understand why I have to have a master's degree to do this job. I like the fact that Morrisville, you don't, because you can get your master's while you're here. So it's another like compensation. So yes, you're working 60 hours a week, but you have a nice apartment and you have educational resource. So, but again, every school is different. I lucked out with that when I came to Morrisville.
Liz, don't be mad at me and Drew, but I have a
Did you call me
bone.
Liz?
I'm sorry, yes, Elizabeth. Liz. Who's Liz? I don't know. Elizabeth and Andrew, I have a bone to pick with the two of you. So not necessarily a bone, but I struggle with term limits. And I go back and forth because I can't stand when people stay in entry-level positions for like what Allison is talking about, 10 years. I want you out. I'm sorry, I'm being very honest. However, then the person in me and the person who sees why this field is so convoluted also says there are really not I can't think of other fields that say, okay, we're going to require you to have a master's for those that do require, or a bachelor's, and we're going to tell you to get out in 4 years. And yes, we're going to tell you that it's going to be great, it's for your growth, but you need to peace out. I've known many people who have been pretty much kicked out after their term limit without much of a job yet. They tried. Sometimes it's a hard thing to find. And it goes back, I know in student affairs, Res Life is seen as the stepchild, so to speak, of the student affairs world. No one else does term limits in student affairs. You don't see it in career services. You don't see it in athletics, really. You don't see it in Greek life. I don't think I've ever heard of it in student life. I think we set ourselves up for disaster sometime with some of our procedures that we create. And I did learn at my last institution from HR, they found out that our dean was trying to do term limits, and she was in big trouble because legally she wasn't allowed to do that without HR's approval. So, you know, and we had an employee who won that case very successfully. But I don't know. I'm curious to hear what everyone else thinks about this, because I struggle, because I see why they're needed, because there are people who just stay in the field longer and then they're miserable, and their misery sometimes spews out to other folks. But I also just think this is why everyone leaves Res Life or stays in Res Life for a couple years, with the exception of us amazing people who are lifers, because we love it. We love it. But I'm curious to hear what everyone else thinks about this too.
And as I said, ours is not a hard and fast HR rule. That is just kind of from the time I hire somebody, from day one, that is our conversation, that, you know, this is usually a 3 to 4 year position. Where do you want to go from here? How can I help you get, you know, do you want to do some experiences with student involvement or international programs? Or, you know, if it's not housing, are there other things you want to explore? And how can I help you figure out what those next steps are? It is not something I use to get rid of people. If there's somebody I want gone, I will terminate them. So I don't necessarily use it to phase out. And it's not a hard and fast, you know, if there was a 5th year needed for somebody because they didn't find the right thing, especially right now with COVID, that is totally understandable. So there's a lot of give in my saying that we're a 4 year and then find something else sort of place.
What if I said, Drew, that I wanted your job in 4 years? Would you be able to give it to me? I want your job in 4 years.
Also, not just the cap, but I put in the chat, but like, we actually don't have any way to like if you love housing, there's nowhere for you to move up in our even within our department. In order to be an assistant director, you need to have supervised a professional. Well, we don't have that. They only supervise students, and grads don't count. Like, they're still students, and as technically as part of this way that what they're looking for. So everybody has to be brought in. But actually, I think what the issue is that we're not adapting to the change in the field of, like, there were just like when we would go to OPE every year and we would get new people every 2 to 3 years, and we didn't have to try. But that the difference is now, like, now you have to try and open it up, and like you're maybe getting 2 people when you used to get 10 even apply for the position. So I'm just not adjusting even to like why I even have to consider a term limit, because folks are just not, there's not a pressure on their tail to make a change. And so I do want, like I told Julie, I want to talk to her later about like kind of how to coach folks out. Like this is a skill. I need to figure out how to like help folks really direct them to something different when I'm like, but this is a problem because I can't, Andrew's like, oh, I just terminate them. I'm like, well, that must be nice because our HR department's like, oh no, you're in for quite the process if you want this person gone, because they're really not causing a lot of problems. They're just angsty, like they're just like unhappy. Like I can't, I need to like actually just help them to find something else. I'm like, have you considered this? Like, it's so weird. Like every week they're getting like a conversation with me in their one-on-one about like, have you considered a totally different field? Have you considered, like you don't have enough money to start your own business. I get it. Like they're just like stuck, and I really want to help them. But I also don't want to terminate people, like you said, for the sake of terminating them. Like I still need them. Like I would still have to fill their position, and I don't really know that I'm ready to do that either. So it's like the best for everybody. Like what I really am not satisfied until we find a win-win-win scenario. Like we just have to keep trying. So anyway, thanks Julie for reaching out.
Performance programs or anything?
Say that again.
Do you like okay, so a couple years ago I was in the same boat where we had staff that didn't want to stay in higher ed. So in our performance program, we actually added new areas. So then that's kind of like what they're the liaison to. So like diversity and inclusion, admissions, So then when I had to have those conversations, everybody had to pick one. No one could pick the same one. But then when you get that person, I had a person that was stuck 2 years ago, really bad. And their time was coming up. And yes, I kind of agree with the time commitment thing. I like it and I hate it. I like it because the people that take advantage of it are the ones I know are going to thrive and do well. And then the ones that are like here and giving me emails from parents like, why is this creepy old man in my building? Yes, I had a 55-year-old RD at one of my jobs. Don't go there. So, because it kind of creeped out the students and the parents, but moving on. So what we did is with the performance program, and that wasn't here. At the performance program, what we do is we add those areas. And then when I got to this person that was here 2 years ago, I was able to be like, okay, this is the only one left. And I know that you're not happy, and I know you don't want to be here, and I know you don't want to be in higher ed, and I know you don't want to do residence life. But is it you don't want to do higher ed or you don't want to do residence life? So they actually got the liaison for tutoring and academics. They fell in love with it because they had this time, they built their resume, and we got to like nicely have them depart and go into academic advising, and they're thriving. But it's just adding that, really, Robin, adding that, you're not an RD living in the building. That's the problem. That was the problem. But that did help me get this person to see that there was another area that they were interested in, and they weren't like stuck. I mean, I lucked out, and it literally was the last one left. And we had no clue that I thought they were going to like hate
I'm
me.
probably going to message you later too about like what your particular program looks like. But for ours, we do offer collaterals, which is like basically it sounds like something similar where they work in other areas. I even allowed, I think 2 of them are even teaching a first year seminar course. Like they've done almost everything there is to do on the campus. But we also, there's not even open positions for them to even move to a different department. Like it's just very like, and I don't know how much of that is small school or just us, but it's just like, I know they've really invested in the university. They've invested in the city that they live in. Like they found a community here of like, their church and their friends. And like, they're like, I don't want to leave. And I'm like, right. But like, you're kind of like on my nerves. So it kind of just depends. And it's like, but also you deserve more. Like, I totally understand. I've been in that situation where I've been unhappy being like, I feel like I've done all I can do here in this job, and it's like, so I want to work on that, but I'm interested in this liaison thing because I do have some things where they sit on committees or councils around campus, or they teach, or they, they do all kinds of things that are in other areas, but as like an additional responsibilities or things that, are good for housing, but also good for them, and exposes them to different areas. But I'm interested in this liaison thing. So Elizabeth.
I mean, I'm not going to lie, we lucked out. I thought it was going to be hell. I really, really did. Because I had tried so many other options. And I was like, so they were someone that I got when I got here. And I was like, oh gosh, this is going to be so much fun. And I don't like setting people up for failure. And I constantly like send out job openings if I know there's an area you want to move to or a position you want to move to, stuff like that. But this person, I had nothing. And honestly, I thought it was going to be a year that I was never going to want to relive in my life. And I don't know how it worked. but it did. And now they're doing amazing. And I'm so excited because they're doing really well. And we were able to leave on a positive note versus I thought like this person was going to burn every bridge on the way out. So we kind of lucked out. It doesn't always happen.
Alison, you mentioned something too that I think folks forget about in this field, where we tend to want, and it's not just res life, and sometimes it's, student life, Greek life, whatever. We tend to want the next best thing, or somebody green and somebody, with new experiences to come in. Folks, especially if you're in a rural area and whatnot, folks start to make a life. I have colleagues who I know at a university in Jersey who, without getting into too much detail, their AVP are pushing them out. They've been on PIPs. They are definitely from conversations that are being had behind closed doors. They're fully aware that this new AVP wants them out, wants to bring in new blood. They've been there for 15 years in their roles, 10 years. And they're senior roles, but this new AVP is new and wants to bring in new blood and wants to bring his own people in, and which happens very often. I struggle because my two friends and colleagues were complaining about this to me, and they were like, I was like, well, maybe it's time to move on after 15 years. You've been there since I've known you. After 15 years, maybe it's time to move on somewhere. And they're like, yeah, but I own a home. I have kids who go to school here. I have this, like, what do we do? And it's tricky because you're kind of told from the beginning, at least I was, and I'm not sure if other people that are in my age range, like, older millennials and stuff, were told this too by mentors, but, don't get too settled into too many positions in this field, because you're expected to kind of move on and move around and grow and whatnot. But, I think people forget that, you also want to have a life, and you want to be able to, settle down, put roots down somewhere. You can't just keep on keeping on for the rest of your life. But we're always told that in student affairs, your positions you shouldn't retire. I think one time I was told you shouldn't retire from any position unless you're like an AVP or something. And that's, or VP. And that's frustrating, because if you have a master's degree and you're a director of a department and you have kids in a school zone that you love, and you have a church or whatever, like somebody just mentioned, you have a community, it's kind of like, okay, well, you've been here 7 years, we need you to move on so we can get somebody younger. Well, you're uprooting somebody's entire family. So I see both sides, I really do, which is a struggle. But this is also, no other field does this sort of nonsense with hiring practices. So I don't know.
So Alison,
What's a PIP?
A PIP is a performance improvement plan. It's usually, if you've never been on one, or if you're not familiar with like HR, like protocol with that, it's meant to help you progress. However, I can tell you, as somebody who studied HR and who has, taken a few courses and looked at HR as a profession, PIPs, if a vice president or an AVP invokes a PIP on you and they're not even your direct supervisor, it's because they want you to get the hell out, and they're putting all their ducks in a row. And once they have one or two of those PIPs, they can legally just kick you out and not even worry about it. So once you get one, it's usually a sign that you better haul ass out before they fire you, because it's very. And especially in our field, a lot of things are done in conversations and coachings. So if you actually get a PIP and not like a warning or a little documentation that says, hey, work on this, or a conversation during your annual review, whatever. When you get a PIP, it's just, it's the beginning of the end, is what I've been told.
so Alison, one of the things that I do with my staff is, after they've been here for a year, when they have that first evaluation with me, I let them know that during the second year, every other month, we're going to do coaching and talk to them about what it is that they want to do with their career. Are you going to be a res lifer? Great. How do I help you get the director job eventually? Because for some, if they come in here and they're a assistant director of housing for us, that's an entry-level position, and they're likely not going to go to be a director right away unless they're at another small school. But if they ascend to the associate for res ed or the associate for operations, then they're ready to become a director. Right now, I'm really fortunate. I hired 2 former directors from real small private schools to come in and be those 2 associates. So they took a step down to get a broader experience. But anytime I have a meeting across campus, if somebody has expressed interest to me that, yeah, Julie, I want to be a director, but I know one of the things I need to know how to do is facilities and construction and furniture and all the things they don't teach us in our graduate program, but you are expected to learn at some point. I had great mentors when I was coming up in the field from NHTI. I came back and I said, I need facilities experience because I'm going to be a director someday. And so I supervised our paint crew that next summer when I was a grad student and started picking all the furniture for my buildings when I was a first year area coordinator because my facilities person knew that I needed that. And so I've mentored that and done it with all of my team. So we have our construction meeting. I take my staff with me and I'm like, you sit behind me. You're not at the table, keep your mouth shut, but you're going to hear what they talk about, what contractors are talking about, what architects are talking about, when I'm inserting and saying, no, this is going to be a change order because that's not acceptable. And then when we drive back, we process what that meeting looked like. So they're constantly getting the experience. When we do a facilities walk, I'm talking to them about soffits and eyebrows and what the facility of the building looks like. And when we do a walkthrough in the building, I'm going into every door. I'm like, you need to know what's behind every door, what every key opens every door, and you need to understand every single system that's in your building. And if you don't, let's go have a conversation with IT. Let's go have a conversation with facilities. I want you to understand what this pipe does, and constantly educating them so that when they leave, they can become a director someplace else. And I think that that's our job as directors, to do that for our employees. So that's what I do in terms of coaching is every other month we tackle something that's going to make them better, but I'm always asking them, where are you going when you leave here?
That's good. That's a good idea, actually.
And I might be the oldest person on the call because I'm 51. And so this, except for Robin, yes, because I know Robin from many, many years ago, but I've been doing that with my staff since I was 25. And I got a lot of former staff that are directors.
Elizabeth, I'd be worried if your students saw me. My apartment's in the hall as well, so I'd be the creepy old man in the hall as well.
Okay, let me explain. This person lived in the hall, but they used the facilities in the hall and stuff like that. They didn't just use their apartment. And so they would take showers in the hallway and walk down the hallway with their towel on. That's what bothered people. That's the only thing, honestly. They were a very nice person. So I had to explain to them that just take your shower in your own apartment.
Yeah.
So that was the problem we had. Nothing horrible, just take your shower in your own apartment. Don't walk the halls with a towel on. It literally got fixed after 3 weeks, but it took about 7 letters from parents. And my staff just relabeled a whole bunch of envelopes wrong. So I went in to correct it. Now I'm pulling stuff apart. So, but yes, it wasn't anything horrible, creepy, bad. It was just took a shower.
Your students would have definitely not have liked working at some of the institutions I worked at. When I was in grad school, I worked at NYU for a summer, and Tom Ellett lived in the dorms. So they would have, and he was just all around with his dog. He was hanging out. I met him randomly.
That didn't bother them. The age of this man did not bother them. They loved that he was older. They called him dad. They loved this man. Thing that bothered them was he would take a shower and walk down the hallway.
That's disturbing.
So that was the only thing. And as soon as I told him that probably wasn't the best idea, he stopped because he really did care about his students. But they loved that he did cookouts. Robin, I'm gonna start calling you dad. They loved it. They loved that he would do barbecues, and he would have he had the best interactions with students because they felt comfortable going in and getting that fatherly advice. So he was very well knowledgeable. He was amazing. He's still one of my favorite people this day. But that was the weirdest conversation I ever had with somebody.
That's a weird, to be a 55-year-old residence life professional walking the halls.
He was 55 at the time, but he was close to he was between his late 40s and early 50s.
Father Gagnon. I like that. Wouldn't that make you a priest?
I think actually having older faculty, like the faculty staff programs in residence halls is very
I
beneficial.
think so too.
And I
wish we
think
did more of
having
that.
older staff in residence halls is very beneficial. Like, I don't have a problem with it. Because honestly, you get to have those interactions where maybe someone doesn't have a good, like,
Home
older
life,
person
yeah.
to look to. And someone that's 22 to 28 might be going through the same thing that they're going through at the same age. So I think it is very beneficial to have an older person that has more experience and knowledge for students to talk to, especially if they don't have that in their lives. So I've never been against it. That's why I go back and forth on the age thing, because it's very beneficial to have older RDs.
It is, and I like the idea of having families too. I wish we had some. There's something to be said. When I had interviewed before I got this position, I interviewed as well for a position at UPenn, literally down the block from us. And they have faculty in residency. They have, their house deans, which is the equivalent of like a senior level RD almost, if you will. Their house deans are like, have families, a lot of them, and have kids. And it's students actually respond really well to it. And there's something to be said about going to the cafeteria and seeing a family there as well with their kids. And I don't know, it kind of makes you feel a little bit more like this is a home and not a dormitory. And people have made that home. And it's also nice.
The noise goes down too.
The noise does go down. Also,
we had an RD that had a family and they had 2 young children, and people wanted to be respectful of their children.
Yeah. And
so the noise volume in that building dropped.
If there's a mom or a dad, regardless of their age, if there's a mom or a dad in the building, I think it just almost makes you feel like, let me not be a jerk and like play my music at 3 a.m. loud. You know what I mean? I feel
at
like
my last institution, I actually was pregnant there and had my youngest child, and people would, like, you could hear them hush each other as they were passing the door to my apartment. They were like, shh, and I'm like, you guys, that's almost as loud as if you were shouting. Like, come on now. Like, but it was really sweet because, like, the kids are really, they're young, like they're freshmen, and a lot of them, again, that was actually a community college, and a lot of those folks like never even envisioned going to college. So like it was a lot of new experiences for them and new culture, and it was really sweet that they were thinking about us. But yeah, we had, at that point, it was my 3rd child, so we had like quite a house full of people, and it was, and again, like Elizabeth said, I actually really appreciated that I had an outside door, so I didn't always have to go inside, and actually we rarely went through the lobby. When people saw me in the lobby, it was sort of like, what's happening here? Nobody's in trouble, I'm just visiting. So I had to like actually be visible just so people didn't think I was, on a mission every time. But yeah, no, having kids is really refreshing. It's good for the kids, but the college students, those kids.
a fraternity house. Oh boy, I used to live in a fraternity house. It was, I don't know if I'd want to have children there. Oh, it's renovated.
It was
though.
a former fraternity house that had been renovated, but
Did you have it fumigated and cleaned out and everything? 'Cause
they took it down to the studs when they renovated.
thank goodness. I know our house had to be.
Studs too. Yeah, my kids are really, my older 2 are really, think that's really a fun story to be like, I've lived in the residence halls, because they're teenagers now. They were, 3 and 4, well, very young basically when that happened. So
it's going back to our other conversation about work-life balance. That's, as much as there are days where I dream about like, what is it like to leave work at 5 o'clock and it not call you? But at the same time, like, my kids think that, being on campus is part of their life too. COVID has changed that, and it's not so much fun, but like, I've got to leave for soccer practice at 4:30. Not a big deal, because I was just on duty and somebody's going to call and need help with something after hours anyways. So, you also have to be able to appreciate that flexibility of, work intrudes on your personal life, but there's also a lot of good opportunities for your personal life to be able to intrude right back.
Yep, totally agree. I always say that too. And I think it must be great to raise, I don't have kids, but it must be great to raise your kids in a college campus. I think it sets them up for success. They get to really be a part of the community. And just think about all the amazing speakers you can have them see while they're like young for free. That's pretty awesome.
Well, and also they will go to 1st grade and say, I've already been to college. Because that is what Quincy did. Because they're like, what did you do this summer? He goes, I went to college with my mommy. And the teacher emails me and she goes, how did Quincy go to college? He's going into 1st grade. I'm like, because I work at one and he hung out with me a couple times. And they're like, what? And I'm like, yeah.
I had a colleague at my previous institution, please don't judge, but the Republican Club decided to bring Ann Coulter to the campus. And she, our associate dean, wanted to have this be a learning lesson for her daughter, who was, I think, 12. And she's pretty familiar with who Ann Coulter is from just the media and how controversial she is. And she brought her there, and Ann was on her best behavior. Ann did not offend anybody that day. And we swear it's because there was a 12-year-old amongst all these 18, 19-year-old conservatives and a bunch of really awesome liberals who are ready to take down Ann when she was there. But this little girl was so cute. She was just like, she's not so tough in real life. It was so funny. But yeah, I mean, things like that, just it has to impact kids. Like you get to like, I mean, this little girl has seen people like that. She's also seen Governor Cory Booker, Senator Cory Booker speak, and a few other people. It's such a cool opportunity for your kids. I envy that. I think it's kind of cool if I ever get to have kids to have them kind of sit in on that stuff. You're muted.
The movie nights are lots of fun that student activities does, and student activities does like skiing and snow tubing and all this stuff. So to bring your little one, it's so much fun. And then honestly, like Quincy likes the programs like that the RAs do. And then the sports, you can get your kids very involved in sports super early. When I lived on, I did have 2 dogs and a cat and a husband, well, fiance. And the students would be more excited to see me walk out with a dog than me. They'd be like, oh, and they knew the dogs' names. Oh, there's Whiskey. Oh, there's Kelly. Not hi, Beth. And they would like walk right up to him and be like, hi, how you doing? And I'd be like, what the hell? Like, I'm here too. And they would be like, and we're only here to talk to dogs. I mean, I will say my dogs are very well behaved because they don't really bark. And the students learned how to say hi to them, but living on campus isn't a horrible thing.
Pets and children are good emotional support creatures for our students.
Agree.
Well, I think we have reached our time. I threw in the chat the date and time for our next meetup, so be on the lookout for the registration link. Bring your friends with you, but it has been wonderful being able to talk and see y'all, and I look forward to seeing you again in October.